Welcome back, everybody. And for the second session, we're going to talk about, the digital tools that drive a positive customer experience. And for this interesting session, I have two amazing ladies, one from Canada, Diane, and one that I know for quite a long time, Ragnhild, and she's working in Norway as well. So before we start, I wouldn't say, ladies first, but let's start with Canada this time. So Diane, can you introduce yourself and explain a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So my name is Diane Hollett, and I'm based in St. John's, Newfoundland. And I came into this biomarine ingredients world through some R&D projects in Kaizen several years ago. Along that journey, I've been involved in biorefining seaweed and fishery byproducts into numerous types of products. We initially started with a chitosan, and then we ingredient preparation, and then we actually found traction, our best traction in North America, with fish hydrosylates for organic bioactives for agriculture. So as our first project, we really rolled with that one. And I guess if you'd like to talk about how we dealt with this pandemic.
We will.
Yeah, that's what I'll get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ragnhild, pretty much everybody in Europe know you, but for our friends, from Australia, from Asia, from North America, maybe you can say a word about you.
I'm the research director for the Marine Biotechnology Group at Nofima, which is a research institute that's focused towards developing sustainable food and feed solutions for the food of the future. And we work similar as you, Diane. We work with introducing new ingredients, new products from side stream and low value or maybe underutilized marine materials. And across Nofima, they're also terrestrial. So the big link for us is to try to link together what's happening now with both B2B and B2C in terms of the post-pandemic and preferences that are different with the consumers now than they were before. And at the same time, maybe come up with for our customers are actually the industry, but also come up with something that is that sort of connection between both being relevant, but also being possible. And that's also where a lot of technical assistance that I may come in, that we try to couple the techniques and the technology readiness level with what's marketing possible now. And yeah, it's an interesting future now.
Okay, so when we started, to prepare this session with our friend from NC Blue Legacy, the Norwegian cursor, we were wondering, what will be the essence of the customer relationship. And to that session, it has been complicated, to identify you, because to be different, from the previous session, I'd like this time to be more focused on the B2B relationship, of course, and the final customer, and how you understand the needs of this customer, and how you adapt, through the digital age that, occur, almost, 15 months ago. So we're going to start, a few questions to that, but I will start with Diane, because Newfoundland is not very well connected to the world. To be, if we put that, in a nice way, it's a wonderful place. It's a remote place, but with the lockdown that you have endured for the last 12 months, how did you manage to survive?
With the lockdown, it did change how we could communicate and connect and travel and work. So we really turned to our community ecosystem and found ways to build relationships with customers. For us, that meant a pivot into going directly to consumers. Prior to the lockdown, we had a big tidal wave which washed through our plant. And it caused some damage. And then that took time to get around that. So while we were pondering how to make it through what is now an extended period, we turned to a B2C model and started speaking directly to consumers through platforms like Facebook and Instagram. And we found in that group some influencers. And in Newfoundland and in many parts of throughout North America, the Facebook platforms bring together like-minded groups. And so we used some influencers to help us promote and talk directly to customers. And that really worked. And we then built out our retail channel and secured packaging materials, which really meant going to some local manufacturers and convincing them to do production runs for us because we couldn't import at that time. So we created sort of a model that worked in a kind of on an island community level, and that we hope to roll out as we rebuild our new plant. And that's really the work that we're undertaking now, is going through the environmental registration and expanding the hydroxylate plant. But as we do, we have to be lockstep with the customer and understanding what they want. So, and they differ, of course, by segments, and you have to have strategies to reach each one of them.
We'll come back because this is a very interesting case. But as for Nofima, Nofima is working with global clients. You have people coming to you, asking you to develop new products. And you are not only on the marine aspect, but you're also scanning lots of things using, vegetable waste or new products coming from the agriculture byproducts. And how did you anticipate and adapt, to this new context, Ragnhild? And how do you make the link, between the final customer and your existing customer using these new strategies?
We adapted, I think, as most people did, really quickly over to being electronic. And what we have ongoing projects that are long running that we work with both industry and other research institutions. And so they had to be done. And that was a little hard when we were closed down, and you can't do your lab work digitally. So we had to find solutions on how to do that safely. And then now we have to try to find how do we stay current in a changing industry where we have to show that we're still current in terms of being an attractive research partner. And in that way, we need to know what's the future for the clients, the actual consumers, going to be. So we do work a lot on reaching out to consumers a little differently than we did before. Before, we could have more focus groups, we could have taste panels, we could have consumers come in and give us feedback, and we could do prototypes, demonstrations, and we get feedback. We can't do that anymore. So now we're reaching out in different platforms and trying to stay current with, with Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and now also Clubhouse, and trying to make rooms where we can sort of talk about what we're doing. And then at the same time, we're taking in new technology, looking at eye tracking or biometrics, biometric marketing, where we can see, because a lot of the shopping is now done online, and so you can track how is the facial expression changing if you're looking at one thing or the another thing, and how do we communicate it. And another thing that we really found, as Diane's saying, is the different groups are so much more segmented now than they were. So you have to target your products much more than you used to be able to do. And so at the same time as being sort of a technology research company too, we always try to, how do we couple that with the technology that's not available now available? And that has been, the digital marketing and digital communication has exploded, and while the sort of technology and physical work has slowed down. And so the connection there has been a little difficult, but we've found some ways to do it. But we're all looking forward to being more free to combine those new techniques, digital and physical in a way. And I think you heard that in the last session too. But yes, more local, as you're saying, I was going to take that up again. We see that the preferences from the consumer is much more local. And the cool thing is doing those island communities. If we can do them more places, can we expand on your island community idea of producing the food locally, not only for consumer preferences, but also because that's what we're going to need to do in the future if we're going to have food security. So it's an interesting change.
You said something very interesting, and I'd like you to elaborate on this, and maybe Diane, you can answer this. Did you notice or see an actual change in the market fragmentation, and why is it so? Is it because the people are more concentrated on their own local communities and the need change, or what happened?
Well, when you're on an island and you can't access supplies, you become necessarily more resilient and looking for community-based resources. So we found there came a greater awareness of supply chain influences, and people, consumers, some want to buy more local or preference, but others really have no choice, because if you cannot get your regular supply, you've got to adapt. So we found that triggered a stronger interest in the work that we were doing. And we had to work with our team in different parts of North America to help reach out to those communities. I'm not sure if I'm really asking your question right now, but one of the things that we had to do is try different techniques and different platforms. And some of the early adopters in the marine sort of fertilizer, biostimulant industry weren't interested in TikTok or in the Facebook platforms. So one of our group, Nadja in Toronto and Jim in Wisconsin, started reaching out to certain community groups through regular conference calls. It's literally pick up the phone and engage. And so we structured regular weekly conference calls with content that was targeted to the individual needs. And that's the new type of work. It's content development. You have to be bang on with your content and deliver it in a manner that your user group can receive and interact with. And we had to try a few things to get it right.
Yeah, and it links up, with the question that Renato had, in the former session about, the science and the research content. So how do you pass, these very complicated messages with elaborated product towards, a public that watch a message and capture or not the essence of the message in less than 10, 12 seconds using TikTok. So this is a totally different world. And Ragnhild, you should be, torturing yourself, because you like, explaining in full details how the product is good and how it will serve, and bring some added value to the customer. So how can you do that in 12 seconds?
That's why we have a communications department in Nofima. No, and Renato was saying, and Lonzo was saying in the last meeting, that you have to adapt your content to what kind of meeting you're having. And so you have to be much more on now. If you're having a research meeting, of course, how do you present research content in a fast way? But if you're having a customer meeting or somebody that's to take on a very simple message, you say it's good for you because it makes you run faster. So it has to be much more simplified, or is it a strategic meeting? So those things that you have to much more target your content for the meeting now. There's less time for chit chat. There's less time for forming your content as the meeting go on. And so you have to be much more prepared for meeting now, I see. So yes, know what meeting you're going into and know who you're talking to. And a lot of, as you say, a lot of it's conference calls, but video is preferred because you can talk to people and see faces and see their expressions. And in the beginning, we did that even with just at work, because we were all at home and we had regular coffee breaks just to see each other and talk to each other. We're still doing that, not as often, but it's become more of a habit, and it's a good meeting place when we can't see each other.
Okay, and so now that the world is becoming, your marketplace, because you can reach out very quickly using the digital tools. how do you anticipate the demand from the final customers, and how can you prepare? Because you don't have the physical, meetings with the people. It's difficult, to perceive, the details of what they're asking. So how do you deal with this aspect, Diane?
Well, in our case, we've been involved in customer trials for a number of years, and commercial trials where we're selling and building up demand for these products. So, we weren't starting from scratch. We had to continue on with customer needs and product innovations that respond to their challenges. So that's happening. But I find in a digital world, in this COVID time, I'm reading books like Story Brand, like Donald Miller's sort of guide to helping consumers connect with you. And so everybody wants a guide. We want to learn quickly. We want to understand the value proposition and then be able to buy if we want. And as companies, as manufacturers of new products, we have to be able to answer people's questions quickly in that manner. And of course, you can do that with so many tools out there, and you need a communications department. I wish I had a big one. I have a small team, but that's the challenge. You've got to solve problems quickly, get your information out there, and then be able to execute, whether that's through your retail channel, your network, or online.
So you work faster, you work harder. Would it be interesting from a global perspective to be part of a network, of a cluster? Do you think that will bring added value to the independent companies that have somehow the feeling that they work alone on their side? And what will be the added value from being part of this ecosystem, like a cluster? And our friends from NC Blue Legacy, they're doing well, and they try to capitalize on that. But would you say that for you it's important to be part of a larger community of business?
Without a doubt. Oh, if for me, yes, without a doubt. I mean, Newfoundland has 500,000 people, so of the potential to cluster with like-minded groups is here through our university and through some new research capacity at Grenfell. And as you know, we've talked about that with Seaweed and the work that we're able to do there around neuroprotection. But our network has to be global. We are a supplier in a global chain. So the more, clusters, yes, but for us, a cluster can't be a local provincial cluster. It has to be a global cluster.
Would you agree, Ragnhild?
Yeah, I think of course, a global cluster in the way that we actually can do them maybe more easily and more frequently now than we could before, because we don't have to travel to see each other. And hearing just Diane talk and knowing what we talk about in my research communities and in Europe, it's like you have the same challenges as we have. We have the same we face the same issues. And so being better at reaching across and trying to solve those together, I think will be very valuable. So I think maybe now the global or international clusters to find ways to actually do those meetings and to exchange knowledge and exchange experience can actually be easier now than they were before, even if it sounds contradictory when we can't travel. But there's also going to be travel coming up. But of course, we are an international cluster, Biomarine, and it has been very, very fruitful for all of the researchers and the industry to come together and exchange in those meetings. So we know they're valuable.
Yes.
Wenke sent us, a very timely question about, you can do whatever you want and improve the relationship with the customer and your partners. But what about, the regulatory authorities and bodies? They're always the bottleneck. And do you think that they can adapt, to these new communication tools? And what will be the global expectation, if we want to improve the way from developing a product and putting it on the market in this context? Ragnhild, you may go first.
In my experience, I've had some contact with several regulatory authorities lately, and this last year in digital meetings. And I really feel that they do adapt more than we give them credit for. There's been recent movements within the EU to facilitate or at least help or do more towards getting novel food improvement for algae species, both macro and micro. So that's something that's going on, and it's because it's been a need that's been played in by the industry and the other regulatory bodies that we need to get that process maybe easier or more streamlined, or something that the industry can do without too much challenges. And I also see that, at least in Norway, in my experience, that they are continually collecting knowledge, and we as the research institution and the industry, it's our obligation to provide them with that knowledge. We have to work better with the regulatory authorities, because you can't expect them to know everything about every little species that's out there that we want to use. And so we have a responsibility to provide them with that knowledge. We have to find the levels of, advantage substances or any sort of level of nutrition, anything that they need in order to make informed decisions. So the communication between, I think, the regulatory bodies and the industry and the research community needs to be improved, and should have been improved a long time ago in order for us to move faster, because no products are coming out faster and faster and faster, and they're more and more personalized, both with the marketing being more personalized. We're also looking at personalized food. And so this is going to create a change. And so for me, I think what I can do is take on the responsibility and be a provider of knowledge for the regulatory bodies, for them to make more informed decisions.
And on your side, Diane, is it the same, I would say, constant? And do you think that there is a way to improve, the time to market, for the product, and how the regulatory bodies, can improve this digitalization area?
We've had good cooperation with our colleagues in the regulatory agencies, but we've also had to accommodate delays as people are moving from home to office and back to home. We've found that has literally slowed things down. In our province, our election was called, and then we had a lockdown. So the wheels of the apparatus were legislatively stopped for an extended period. So as long as you're able to get through, there are some COVID delays across the board. We've found our colleagues who are working the same as we are, and they're able to reach out, and they're very interested in moving projects forward. So yeah, but it has been a bit slower for us to move things through.
So the question, and the first answer, you decide who will answer first, but what is the most important trends in food nutrition, within the marine sector that you foresee, especially now that we're in the lockdown period? Is there a trend? Is there some ingredient that are in high demand? And how will you cope, with this demand, as we are, a bit, I would say, in between two different periods? Who wants to start with that one?
I'll jump in there. Oh,
okay.
Well, I'll just speak briefly to I'm seeing bigger trends in health and awareness and natural foods.
Is it a consequence of the COVID or not?
I think COVID has accelerated what was already there. I'm surprised at how broadly that awareness has penetrated. I mean, Newfoundland is an oil and gas economy, as Norway, smaller, much smaller and much more nascent in its emergence of infrastructure. Even the engineers are saying, well, we will be going into that sustainable world. We have to find alternatives. It's happening. I think COVID accelerated it. Awareness was there.
And you, Ragnhild, because you were at the forefront of, natural food ingredient, for quite a long time, but you expect, this sector to be booming and the customer demand is increasing?
I think the the thing to keep in mind, yes, it's my first answer. And the thing to keep in mind is that we're also seeing the local interest. So there's not going to be one product that's going to be the biggest all over, but it's going to be, I think Europe as a whole is sort of an area to take into consideration. It's not going to be one in Norway, one in Sweden, but I think health promoting products, ingredients that are natural, can be processed, but with then natural ingredients, or not with solvents and sort of natural products. And I think local as something, and I think not imported from east or west very far. It's also a trend that we see. We see a lot of people being interested in the health effects of like phycoidins and antioxidants and polyphenol. And chitin has been a big thing that we've seen lately. Lots of interest in it. So maybe you should go back to that, Diane. And, and collagen, you know, it's all preventive health. And we saw Alonso the last meeting with the joint health. So all this, you know, you want to stay healthy so that if there's a next, you know, pandemic, maybe now that you can survive it because you're strong and you're healthy to start with, and you're not taking the reactive medicines. And I think preventive food, sort of health, preventive medicine has been coming, and then now that we see the effects of the pandemic, I think it's just been accelerated.
And not to prepare, you know, the next session that is coming on the blockchain, but would you say that what would be the most valuable service that the digitalization could bring, you know, to the customer experience? Would like to start with this one.
I can start. I mentioned it in the beginning, but I think, as I said, that we're all sort of, we have time now. We have time to cook at home. We are not all influenced what the chef in the restaurants wants to cook. We sort of make it ourselves, and so and digital digitalization can help us get what we actually want without even knowing it. I was talking about sort of eye tracking and biometrics marketing in the way that you can find out what you want, and you can buy online what you desire. Maybe you don't even know it yourself, but it's been marketed to you because of your facial expressions. And my thought, my great thought there would be, what if we can combine that with what you actually need? And so you can get healthy food from marketed to you from what you actually want, but also combine it with what you actually need. And we have the technology for that now. So I think that is an interesting future.
I think the big trend in natural foods and marine bioactives is certainly segmentization and matching that content and that product to the customer. And we do have the data and the systems to let us drill into customer behavior and preferences. So more and more and more CPG analysis around customer needs, customer preferences, and then you have to bring that into your communications and your product development. So it's really about individualization. I think it's the ultimate ego thing about our generation. It's about us, and we want it individualized. We want our medicine customized. We want our foods. We want our functional foods and the foods that we choose to buy to support us. And I think we're going to see more demands in that direction.
But how can you adapt, you know, to this demand? Because when you're dealing with B2B, it's, well, you understand that, you know, there will be a value chain and logistic behind this. But if you take now this B2C approach, and if you try, you know, to personalize the final product for each demand, how can you be ready for that when you're a small company? Ragnhild.
I think you can't, of course, you can't personalize every product towards one customer. What you can personalize is the way that you present that product, or maybe even the way that you package it. But of course, if the bulk ingredient in what you make has to be somewhat similar. In terms of bioactivity, you can fraction it and make it, you know, for sports nutrition, you can fraction it and make it more bioactive or something. But in terms, I think a lot of that personalization, if you're talking about segmenting in the way that Diane's talking, a lot of it has to be within the communication and not the actual technology to make it.
Agreed.
Diane? Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's a communications piece.
I've got a question because you're from Canada, Ragnhild is from Norway. we're always thinking about the mature market and the ingredient and the trends that people are expecting to develop. But what about the potential of I'll say southern hemisphere like Africa? Do you think that they can deal with this increasing demand and the digitalization of this new industry? Will it be complicated? And how do you anticipate the partnership between the North and the South? Ragnhild?
That's a difficult one. I'm speaking, of course, now from the sort of Western world, where we have all access to digital communication much easier. I think that's coming more in sort of, I think you're talking about underdeveloped world, but that's more of that's the unknown for me. I actually don't know how that's going to be. I know that we need to take some responsibility again to try to translate the knowledge that we've acquired here and try to make sure that that can be used in different countries. But I'm not an expert on how to do that.
Actually. You don't have any partners, customers in Africa, or you're not sourcing from Africa, and you're not establishing links with Africa, South America? Not so far?
We have some projects that are more research-based funded, I know, across to both Africa and South America. And so on an academic base, we are well connected, and in the aquaculture, we're also connected to our aquaculture areas in the South America. But in the communication and marketing, I'm not sure how much we have translated that yet.
Okay. My last question is more on the future. So I understand that Newfoundland is not isolated anymore, because you found this new vector of communication using TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. Well, my son keeps telling me, LinkedIn is, Facebook for old people. So I try, not to use it again, but still useful. So how do you imagine the next 5 years? Will it be a dramatic change in the way you conduct your business? Yes or no? And what will be, the strategy that you will engage on this, Diane?
Without a doubt, connectivity through social channels is a profound force that's staying with us. We aren't going to go back. There's so many events and meetings and collaborations you can do more effectively through Zoom. We don't get the same kind of pleasure in having a dinner with somebody and getting to know them on a personal basis as we might like. But we do so much more. We are so much more effective at this level. So it's never going to go away. I think people will continue to work from home when it's convenient, and we'll see more of a blending of what we've learned through this COVID pandemic together with where we're going in the future. I'm not sure if that really answers your question.
Yeah, partially, yeah. So I see a bright future, for you and Newfoundland. And on the Nofima side, will it be a big shift in the way you conduct the business, Ragnhild?
It could be, and that's what we're trying to find out. What we're looking into now is the different drivers that we'll see in the future in terms of politics and trade will be very protectionistic or a bit more globalized, and how is that going to move after the pandemic? And so we try to find now what's going to be the drivers coming up for the next 5 to 10 years, and then we try to make ourselves able to adapt to those changes. I definitely agree that a lot of more meetings is going to be done online. What I do see with the increased productivity, yes, but also decreased meeting with people, is that the actual connection and the trust between people kind of disappears a little bit. And so sometimes collaborations can actually be a little harder, especially for us scientists that are very sort of dependent on the trust if we share information and stuff. So for me, that's been a drawback, even though there's a lot of positive with it. That's one thing work-wise that I've seen been a little different. But for us, we have to see how global trade, global politics, global financing changes after the pandemic, and I don't think we know what that's going to be, if it's going to be more global or less global. But in that terms, we have to change how we address research challenges, but also the industry that's our customers directly.
Thank you very much for this very useful insight from this. If you have any questions, and I'm talking to the audience, you'll be able to revisit this interview online afterwards. It's going to be posted online. I will send and post the contacts if you want to get in touch with Diane or Ragnhild. I will also send you the contacts. They are both on a very interesting sector. Ragnhild is working in many different sectors, and Diane is getting the momentum on seaweed. So thank you very much for your participation. Thanks again for being there. I invite you to log off and to log in the next session where we're going to talk about blockchain. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.